Welcome to Giants Latest. Hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on all things New York Giants. Let's get right into it and talk how I am feeling about the draft, and I want to know how you guys are feeling because the consensus that I have seen across the board is that most Giants fans are pretty thrilled about it, and I fall into that category. Overall, I think the Giants did a really nice job with this class. I feel really good about the players that they brought in, where they got him, that they got good value for them. And, just the talent of this group, I think is so fantastic. And I can't believe some of the players that they got where they did. Darius Alexander was a guy that I absolutely loved. And I cannot believe that the Giants got him at 65. Cam Scatterbo, another guy that I was super thrilled if the Giants were going to be able to get him. Where did they get him? 105. An offensive lineman who plays guard and tackle, who's played with Tyrone Tracy Jr. and is going to have that reunion coming from Purdue in Marcus Bowe. And don't even get me started on Abdul Carter. I could talk about him forever. You guys know that. I've already talked about him forever. I am so excited. And I will say that the more I see about Jackson Dart, I am cautiously optimistic about him. That's going to be my approach because on draft night, I didn't love it. I still don't necessarily love it. But my biggest concern on draft night was this. The Giants got rid of their 99th pick. Obviously, they moved from 34 to 25, and giving away a third round pick next year is what it is. I felt like they probably could have gotten Jackson Dart at 34 if they really wanted him, and they didn't have to give away 99, which would have given them the opportunity to get Alexander, Scatterbo, or a different offensive lineman or someone at that point. So the way I feel now is I'm okay with the pick because they were still able to get really good players of good value at 65, 105, and even 154. So obviously we have to see how these guys actually play and how they do for the Giants. But I think that there's a reason to be excited and there's a reason to be optimistic about this team moving forward. And I think you can even be optimistic about the front office. There was no reaching. There was no, we're only going best player available, blah, blah, blah. And look, we can talk about Jackson Dart and whether or not that's a reach. In my opinion, at the time, I felt like it was. I still feel like outside of Cam Ward, none of the quarterbacks in this class were worth a fifth overall, were worth a first overall pick. That's just my opinion. I'm not a scout. What do I know? We'll see how this pans out. But it seemed like that was the common consensus across the board. So I felt like the Giants didn't have to move up for Dart. I know part of the reason why they did it, having that fifth year option is nice, especially with the likelihood that Dart is probably going to sit this whole year, if not majority of it. So having that extra year is great. And honestly, time is going to tell who's right and who's wrong and whether or not this was the good move. But I feel better about the pick now, also knowing that we got really good talent with those other picks. That's the number one thing that I was afraid of. And ultimately, look, we'll see. This is going to be the real Brian Daboll test, right? Was it Josh Allen? Was it the other work that Josh Allen did with different coaches and things outside of Brian Daboll? Or was it really Brian Daboll? And when we talk about Josh Allen, you can't attribute everything to Daboll because look how well Josh Allen is doing without him, right? And look at how our quarterbacks have done with Brian Daboll. So I think this is going to be the first real test for us Giants fans. I think when you look at Jones and Tyrod and Locke and Boyle and DeVito, like, they didn't really pick those guys, and they did to some degree, right? But they didn't scout them in the draft. They didn't move up for them. They didn't give up assets. They didn't go full force 100% in and say, this is my guy, and we are doing whatever it takes to make it work with him because we think that he's the guy of the future. And they did that with Jackson Dart. So I'm cautiously optimistic. I hope that Brian Daboll is that guy, and I really hope that he's going to be able to bring out the better traits in Jackson Dart, and there are some really good ones that we'll get talking about this week and forevermore, I'm sure. But, there obviously are also things that he has to work on, and I really am on board with the fact that he's just going to be able to sit and learn and work on it while Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston lead the way and maybe get us some wins. Time will tell. We'll see about that. But otherwise, like I said, I love all the picks. I feel really good about them right now. Let's hope that it translates. Something else that I just was talking about, we'll go into a little more depth here, is that he waited. Joe Shane, I think, did a really nice job of being patient. And that's one of the things, that I was worried about when I heard that they were moving up. And, it was either going to be Shador or Dart, right? At that point, like they weren't going to do what the Falcons did and move up to get an edge. And the Giants, I think, are finally getting some respect. And look, we're a 3-14 team. We don't deserve that much respect, right? That's fine. That's fair. But on draft night, when the Giants were getting so much crap for going for it and going all in for their quarterback, they didn't even give up a first round pick. And then you have the Falcons doing what they did. I'm like, look, if you're going to crap on one team, do it to the Falcons. It's really disrespectful that you're just going after the Giants over and over again when in the grand scheme of things, they didn't give up a lot to go get their guy. And the Falcons did it for an edge rusher. I mean, I am convinced that the Falcons GM is hammered on draft night because for the last 2 years, and look, the quarterback thing kind of worked out, but paying Kirk Cousins all that money didn't work out. So I'm like, that man needs some help. Like, for all the gripes that we give Joe Schoen, which he does deserve, the Falcons GM is in another stratosphere of being an absolute lunatic, especially on draft night. So I ultimately feel like what Joe Schoen did was right for the franchise. He didn't force anything, and he didn't give away a 2026 first round pick. God forbid if he loses his job this year. He didn't do it in free agency, and he didn't do it here. And I have a lot of respect for him for that because we know how it has gone with other GMs with this franchise in the past. So I give him a lot of credit for that because he could have not done that like the Falcons GM. So good job, Joe. Let's talk about their UDFA signing. So right after the draft, this is what happens. Giants bring in a bunch of players who they sign. Usually it's anywhere around 15. They have brought in a good amount so far. And then, you know, in the past, Tommy DeVito was a UDFA. Elijah Chapman was a UDFA. I mean, these guys aren't like amazing starters and have done incredible things for the organization, but you never know. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work out. You got to take that chance, right? So these are the names of the guys that they brought in. There's a lot, so we're not going to spend time on them today, but I will break down and maybe I'll do a series where we just go through some of these guys, what to look for those of you who are going to go to training camp like I am going to be, guys to watch for in camp. Notre Dame wide receiver Bo Collins, Virginia Tech wide receiver Daquan Felton, Ole Miss wide receiver Antwain Juice Wells. One quick note on here. I know a lot of people were talking about Trey Harris, that they wanted the Ole Miss wide receiver for the Giants because of Jackson Dart, etc. This wide receiver, Juice Wells, went undrafted, but I'm sure that he has a lot of experience with Jackson Dart. So 2 guys to keep your eyes on in camp, especially knowing that Dart is going to start with the 3s. DeVito's going to be on the practice squad, and I'm sure, you know, Juice Wells is probably going to be thrown in more with Jackson Dart to get started with. UNC wide receiver Nate McCollum, Louisiana wide receiver Dylan Cambray, Gardner Webb wide receiver Jordan Bly, Oregon State tight end Jermaine Terry, Michigan safety Makari Page, Oklahoma defensive end Trace Ford, Elon running back Rushawn Baker, Idaho safety Tommy McCormick, Wisconsin cornerback RJ Delancey, Youngstown OL Jason Williams, and USF RJ Perry. Don't know what position he is, just seeing that on Twitter. So that's the group of them right now. I'm sure, like I said, you know, over the summer with the post-June first cuts, with players getting releases, the Giants are going to release some players. The summer chaos is going to be chaos for that reason. There will be a bunch of new players on the team and players to watch out for. Just fun to see some other guys brought in the building and see what they can end up doing. So stay tuned. We'll get into more of those guys later this week. In the meantime, I briefly want to touch on this because the NFL announced this during the draft that the schedule release is going to be May 14th. So excited about that. The Giants, we know, have a really tough schedule this year, but I think it's going to be really interesting. And when the schedule comes out, we'll walk through it. They obviously play the usual suspects. I feel like a great season opener for the Giants. They play the Broncos in Denver. And I like this for a season opener, and here's why. Number one, it's like a little less pressure for us, right? Like we can watch from home and kind of sit back and relax, and maybe the home opener is against like the Commanders or something. Maybe. But I think that one game to watch for this year that could be an exciting one if the Giants maybe before then are playing well. Obviously, if they play the Broncos, the season opener, we're not really going to know what to expect. But Russell Wilson revenge game. You heard it here first, okay? Russ Wilson obviously has been on a couple teams in the last few years. They're playing the Broncos. You are not going to convince me that Russ Wilson is going to want to go out there and light it up for his old coach and just kind of prove to him, like, hey, I wasn't as bad as you said I was, and yada, yada, yada. So I think that's going to be a game to watch for. I think it could be a really interesting game. Do I think the Giants are going to win? At this point, probably not. But maybe they're capable enough with all these new players who are really good. And, maybe they'll be, and Russ Wilson, like, maybe it'll be close. Time will tell. I don't know. But in the meantime, I'm excited for the schedule. It always makes me feel like football season is getting closer and closer, and we're only a few weeks away from this. So I can't wait to see what the schedule holds and, have some optimism that this team maybe might not be as bad as we all expected it to be. So stay tuned for more.